Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. Guess what? We got a whole different agenda today. So today we're going to be talking about season-long player props, betting, and nobody to do it better than my boy, my friend, man, Marcus Riley, former NFL player, bro. We had to, we've been talking betting and fantasy over the last couple of years, bro. It's good to have you here, my dog. And listen, I know this is a brand new thing for you, but for me, this is what I do. So I got to put you on, bro. I got to put you on in this space, man.
Put me on, man. Put me on.
How you doing, dog?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm chilling, ready for the season, man. There's OTAs, training camp, all this stuff's going on right now. We've had obviously the free agency period, the draft period, but the people on this channel, they know me already, right? You know what I'm saying? They know me and my background, but I think for somebody who's going to be a constant contributor here and providing a lot of real good knowledge here, I want people to get to know who you are. So for you, man, just kind of drop a little bit about who you are as a football player first, so they can be like, JHEN bringing on credibility. Otherwise, they're going to think it's just me.
For sure, man. Well, yeah, a little bit about myself, man. I've been playing football for a long time. Started my career in 1995, right? Aging myself a little bit when I was 10, man, but was fortunate enough to play, throughout my adolescent career and have great success and earn a scholarship to go to Fresno State. Where I played right between the Carr brothers. I know a lot of people like to ask if I played with Derek or David Carr. I played right in between those guys for Pat Hill. Enjoyed my experience, played with a lot of NFL guys, teammates that went to the league. I was fortunate enough to win Defensive Player of the Year my senior year, which I consider my peak of my football career. My senior year in college was a lot of fun. And then was fortunate enough to sign a few contracts in the NFL. Didn't spend a whole lot of time, man, but the experience from being in the locker room with Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs and, being on a team with Dante Hall and Trent Green, as a Chiefs fan growing up, like I idolized guys like that. And then also being able to spend some time with the Rams with, a cousin that was a coach on the staff, Henry Ellard. Just a lot of great experience throughout my football career. And then once I was done, I transferred over to, done with the NFL, I transferred over to the UFL, right? You guys know the alternative league, but I played for the late, great Jim Fossil, who won a Super Bowl with the New York Giants. Played for him. We won 3 championships in the UFL, and that was a great experience. A lot of my teammates from there went on to coach big time D1 and all over the country. I've been a fantasy guy. I've been loving football, for a long time. I've got a couple championships under my belt, in the fantasy world, and then and coaching as well, right? So I can't get away from it. I love the game. I coached at Southern Methodist University. And then started a family, right? So if you know anything about coaching college football, is that you don't get to spend much time with your family. And so I kind of transitioned out of there and started coaching high school. So I've been coaching high school and running my own academy for about 10 plus years now.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to get into this space and share my knowledge of a little sports betting, a little fantasy and all that.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting part, right? And why, when I was even thinking about people, I was like, Marcus has to find a way in this space because you already teach the game. And I think as somebody who's played football, like I'm different, right? Like I was a hooper growing up, but I was good at the gaming aspect of fantasy football, right? Like, and I understood football to a level that allowed me to win in fantasy. But I think hearing it from a different lens as somebody who has played multiple positions, played in multiple different league types, high school, college, different pro levels, like, you have such a wealth of experience and knowledge that a lot of people don't really get in this space. A lot of, this space in general is full of people who are, they know how to run numbers. Let's just put it that way, right? So these numbers are how they judge if somebody's going to be good or bad. But I think seeing it from somebody who has, you are a linebacker, you have linebacker school, you can see it from the offensive side, the defensive side. You watch so much film, it gives you a little bit more insight and knowledge, and not necessarily where it's guaranteed or like because you see it a different way, it's bound to happen. But it's like we might be talking about a player, you might be like, Jay, that's a whole different vibe than I'm getting from this because of this specific thing.
Right. And I think, I think the player performance context, that's big in that, right? Because I do lean on guys that are fantasy experts at times, but then there's certain things that might be said where I'm kind of like, I don't know if that's it. Like I kind of pulled the brakes. Last year I had the number 1 pick and everybody was like, you're going Christian McCaffrey. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I said,
Yep.
his calf has been sore all summer. Have y'all seen what's going on? And anybody knows when you're dealing with a sore calf that's right there connected to the Achilles, if that's a nagging thing, and then boom, within weeks,
it was like instant.
It was instant. We realized because he's a workhorse. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And anytime you're dealing with those lower extremity, soft tissue, injuries, it could be for you're in for a long season.
Well, that's one of those things. And like I said, I think that's the connection. And it's like it's different when you're just a football player and you never played fantasy, but you even like have played fantasy and like me and you have had conversations about your squads. And like for you personally, why did fantasy football become a thing? Because like for me, obviously, like the number side of it, the math side of it, like it was easy for me in my career path and what I did. Like I like the gaming aspect of it, but for you as a football player, sometimes you hear players don't like fantasy or they don't like the betting side. Like for you, what made fantasy or betting intriguing?
I think, being so far removed from the pro game, made me, kind of jump into it. And then as well, I got kind of jaded on my football experience as far as being a fan of a team, right? Being from Sacramento, we don't have a home team. We don't have a Sacramento team. So,
Right.
Being fortunate enough to get a few opportunities, right? Whoever was paying my bills at the time was my favorite team, was the team that I wanted to win the Super Bowl, right? And so kind of getting that jaded experience from getting signed and getting cut and getting signed and getting cut and getting signed. You're just like, you're no longer attached to a organization.
Because it's a
right?
business, you
Because
realize.
it's a business. It's a real-time business. And so I kind of detached myself from, specific organizations and started to root for players that I like. And so I'm like, what better way to root for the players and the coaches that I like than to be able to draft them individually, watch them, find the sleepers, the Fresno State guys or the lower tier guys that guys might not know about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, it's such a great feeling when those guys pan out and then,
Well, bro, because that's the kind of player I am. Like, I don't really hold any like ties to organizations, teams.
Right.
Like, I'm a Niner fan, but I'm a Niner fan, right? I care more about my fantasy team than my, the Niners sometimes, right? And I know it. Don't take that the wrong way, fans. I know y'all gonna watch and be like, you're not a real fan, but at the end of the day, that's what I care about. I care about my team winning, and sometimes drafting players from your team doesn't equate to winning championships. Sometimes the bias you have for certain players or teams can cause you to lose. And it's from coming from your perspective, especially you mentioned like the Fresno State stuff. Do you find yourself playing to the bias a little bit more? Or are you more like championship or bust? I don't really care about the players, like because you know some of these guys. You know what I mean?
Well, I learned early on in my fantasy career that you can't draft off the bias. You can't draft off your love for the guys because I might have some guys that are backup and I know that they deserve a shot. And they could eventually get the shot, but if you're not getting the touches, you're not getting the touches. And, when it's such a business, the guys who are getting the money, those guys are going to get the touches. And so I've learned, like I said, I learned early on that, okay, I got to let this guy go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like if he ends up blowing later on, I'll still be ahead of the curve on him. But at the same time, I don't want to hold on to guys in the detriment of my team.
That's the biggest thing, right? And I think that's a big reason why you're going to be a part of this thing for a while. And having that player perspective versus the fan perspective, because as fans, it's easy to get attached to bias. It's easy to get attached to certain players, especially with like dynasty being a thing now. You scout these rookies before they come into the league and you're like, no, he's going to be the star. And you put on your own GM hat, you put on your own sense of like, yo, I know what I'm talking about. And then even in the offseason, right? Like this guy's going to be a star. I know this is Puka Nakua's breakout year. So you get attached to that for the entirety of the season. And I think it's different coming from a player's perspective versus a fan perspective, right? Where Some people are very attached. There's others who will quickly detach from a player, probably a little prematurely before they get their opportunity, as you mentioned. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on it because, from my lens, as especially let's talk like younger players right now. From my lens, it's harder for me to like buy into rookies. Right, there's a lot of rookies this year. Travis Hunter, we got Ted McMillan, obviously Ashton Genty are coming into the league. What's your thought as a player on younger players who are coming in, because this dynasty aspect is like really push these guys up the draft boards?
It's definitely hit or miss. You know what I mean? I think one thing I did learn from my time is that timing and placement is everything, right? This guy over here might be the better player, but if you're not in the right situation, it doesn't matter. If you don't have the right quarterback throwing you the ball as a receiver, if you don't have an O-line, blocking for you as a running back, it doesn't really matter how good you are because the other guys are that good, right? And so football being the ultimate team sport, you need a collection of guys around you to succeed. Nobody is doing it by themselves. You've seen, great players have bad years because the guys around them are not performing.
We kind of saw it with like CJ Stroud last year with the Texans. Like when all his receivers started going down, Joe Mixon was hurt at that time. Stephon Diggs was. I was like he started to look like a different version of that CJ Stroud that we saw. You know what I'm saying, that first year rocking the place, right?
Right. No, it all goes together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, like I said, football being the ultimate team sport, you need 45 guys on the same page to win a game. Between the coaches, between the starters, special teams, you know what I mean? There's a lot of guys you're depending on to win, right? And so it's hard. I don't get big on a lot of rookies as well, but there are certain guys that hey, this guy is different, or this guy is a little different. I expected a little bit more from Caleb Williams, but I think he might break out a little bit this year. Because he was one guy I watched in college where I thought to myself, he's different.
Yeah.
And I was watching him against Fresno State and saying to myself, if we beat this guy, I would be super shocked because, he looked like he was just on a different level than everybody on the field. And so I definitely saw that.
What's crazy is like you think of a player like that, or even a player like Marvin Harrison, right? Where the expectations get so great. You're like, Marvin Harrison, son of a former player. He goes to Arizona. He has a great quarterback. And it's like everybody's expectations for him were like 1,500 yards, right? And so it's one of those things where like I think as a player, like as a fan, at least, as somebody who's never played, it's like you see talent, you see the versatility, and that's what you're expecting. You're like, bro, this has got to be a shout out to the kids in the back, by the way. Listen, Mark, you know what I'm saying? Hey, you didn't tell you told him you was a father, but you didn't tell him you had kids. Like,
I did not tell him I had kids. I got 5 to be exact.
Yeah. Bro, I don't know how you do it. I got 5 in my family, and it's too much.
Daddy daycare going right now.
No, but I think that's one of the things is like the expectation level is one of the bigger, clear things that I can see fan-wise versus player-wise. Fans get so upset, even when it comes to bets. Like, you didn't hit your over on the parlay. Like, and sometimes it's situational,
It's definitely situational. And, I having the experience of being talked down on by fans and not performing or not catching somebody's parlay. When I was in college, I know my cousin in Vegas would hit me like, bruh, y'all killed my parlay. And I lost a lot of games that I wasn't supposed to lose. And I won a lot of games that I wasn't supposed to win. And so, when I do bet, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? Like, you're not putting it on the players. They're trying. Nobody's trying to lose, and I approach it with respect, because at the end of the day, I'm not at the level anymore. I'm not at the level these guys are at, right? And so I think it just becomes really easy for a lot of people who haven't been there to be disrespectful and to act like this thing is easy and act like anybody can do it. You know what I mean? But these guys get paid a lot of money because they're the 1% of the 1%. You know what I mean? And so when you're that you're at that level, for me at least, it's just about respect. And, you put your bet in, but at the same time, you want, hold on, baby. You want, you want to just approach it, level headed, and not
Yeah.
take the L's too big, And the thing is, guys are taking these L's and getting mad because they betting, they're not tight with their bank. They're not tight with their bankroll. You know what I mean? They betting 50% of everything they got in their account, or betting 70% of everything. I think 10% max. You know what I mean, in your bankroll, and keep it small and really think long term. That way, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier.
It's interesting too, because it's like when you get to a place where we are in society now, right? Like before, you used to have to go to a casino to place your bet, sports book in a casino to place your bet, or you going through an illegal bookie, right? And in order to talk to players, you had to see them in person or write them a piece of mail. We now have social media. We now have more access to players and information than ever before. More gambling has been legalized in all these states. And it's funny to me because it's like I think fans have got this like entitlement, so to speak, of like I could talk to this player however you want. He didn't do well for me in fantasy. This one player that I have on a roster full of 15, 17 players cost me my game. That fumble, that one play that I watched, that fumble cost me my fantasy matchup. Like, nah, you lost by 20, bro. Like there's not, to me, I feel like this sense of entitlement from fans for the bets, like this person cost me my parlay. I think it's getting out of hand. And I think that's even just coming from my side of it where, on the analyst point of view, I just don't think it's fair to the players to have to deal with that shit, but I get at the end of the day, that's what you sign up for as a player as well. So I don't know, man. It is a lot about your bankroll management, how you manage your ends.
No, definitely. And for me, at least, it's just all about respect, because when we came up, right, we had a respect for everybody on the roster.
It's that old head talk right here.
It's that old head talk, man. It's like, yo, like you made it to the pro. Like it was just a respect level off top. You know what I mean? And now I think with just how, Stephen A. Smith and these certain guys are, they get on here and they call guys bums and you're this and you're that. You know what I mean? And
I did that. I ain't gonna hold you. I did that before, bro. When I did, and I felt bad about this. Is the one I've kind of felt bad about because back in my circles, right? I'm probably gonna post this one later. But back when I'm playing fantasy, I'm a little bit younger. And I think this word was also a different meaning back when you and I were growing up, right? So we would go in and call people tryhards. Like that was something that I would say, like, oh, this person's a tryhard. They ain't getting no real stats. It just looked like they're doing something, right? And so I was on this show called Player's Choice, and they asked me, they're like, a tryhard? I was like, yeah, he a tryhard, bro. Like, he not Christian McCaffrey. Damian Pierce is a tryhard, and I named Damian Pierce as a tryhard. Right. And I was like, he's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not Kenneth Walker. He don't fall forward for yardage. He a little slower. He a little bulkier. He got to work harder for his yards. So I explained it in the fantasy context. And then, bro, I went mega viral. Like mega viral on calling him a tryhard. People call me a clown and, talking a lot of shit to me. But at the end of the day, it was like my perspective on him from a fantasy lens. It trickled over into the real world as well. And I know, I'm not trying to say I'm mega person, but like, I know he's heard that. So I know somebody told him the tryhard stuff. And I felt bad about that because it wasn't my intent, but it was still one of those things where like, I wanted to categorize him as a player and I was talking down on him. So I had to kind of start to change it or play around with it a little bit more to make it more playful. But that was one of my moments as an analyst, like, bro, I know he made the league. He's a great player. He's one of the top end running backs that has ever played the game. But for our fantasy purposes, is he elite? Is he good? Nah, he was a tryhard. And that's how I categorize him. You know what I'm saying?
And it's good that you can self-reflect and say that, right? Because a lot of guys in your shoes are going to like, yo, I went viral. Who's next? You know what I mean? Who's next on my list? Who else can I go viral on? And that's really what it is. Everybody's looking for the views. They're looking for the splash. Let me talk crazy because that's what we like as a society. We like confrontation. We like negativity. You know what I mean? We thrive off of that. And so I understand that aspect of it. Does that mean I like it? No, but at the same time, it's it's understandable.
I can't promise it ain't gonna be there because
Right, right.
I might
Hey,
stab a little
hey,
bit.
hey. Like I said, I understand it. I understand it. Better you than me.
Yeah. Well, especially when we talking bets, right? Because it's easy when we talking
Right,
bets,
right.
it's your money at play. And
It's your
so
money at
somebody don't
play.
perform. I mean, shit, you had teammates before. You probably were like, man, he was shitty today, or he was a bum today. Like it just be
Right,
like that.
right, right,
And
right.
so when it's
No.
part of your money, like I think you become a little bit more invested. One thing I am curious about though, because like you bet with me, I tell you not to bet a whole lot. Like I know this is a losing game. Like even if you are a winner, even if you win a good percentage of your bets, betting is not set up for most people to be successful at it long
Mhm.
term. You can have short
Right.
wins, big wins, even. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm not saying you can't make money off of betting. That's what it's there for. But it is also gambling, and it is way closer to 45, 50% winning than it ever is to 75, 80% winning. Like most of
Right.
the time, even if you're a good bettor, like I would call myself a pretty good bettor analyst. I'm elite at this shit. And it's not like I'm printing out $10 million a year. So I
Right.
think when it comes to your betting style, I'm curious, how have you transitioned from obviously player to betting, fantasy, and trainer, all this stuff, and your knowledge of the game? How have you transitioned? What's your betting style?
I think what I've taken from the game into betting is the discipline, right? Is to have a game plan and just stay with it. Don't chase the L's. You know what I mean? You lose a big one, and a lot of times you're like, there's another game tonight at 8. Let me run it back, and then you don't really do the research on that game, and then now you're chasing 2 L's.
Yeah.
Well, what is it? Who's playing in the morning? You know what I mean? And trying to catch every little last game. And so I think, and then you know what they say, scare money don't make money.
Facts.
Right. And so the thing is, I'm betting long term. I'm not betting to get rich. My money is very terrified. Like I mentioned earlier, I got 5 kids, right?
Yeah.
And so, having these 5 kids, I want to make sure I'm not betting in the red, right? And so controlling my bankroll, not betting big, you know what I mean, and not getting big on these parlays, right?
Yeah. Easy to do.
I think a lot of time you hear the big parlay wins, right? Of course, all the betting sites, they want to show you these big parlay wins. And when they continue to show you, hey, this guy won 100,000 off of $5, right? What do you say to yourself? That can be me.
That could be me.
That can be me. So the next bet you make, the next couple bets you make are parlays. And so I like to do single bets. You know what I mean? I like to do single bets and line those up. And then I might do a parlay with a few of my singles and then add that in as a bonus, right?
Yeah.
We're not making big off of that one. But if I can get a bonus off of that at the end, then like I said, it's a bonus. But I like to keep the single bets. You know what I mean? That keeps me, and it's easier to take those L's. You know what I mean? And yeah.
It's crazy because like in this space, you have to be very confident in your
Mm-hmm.
picks, because if you're not
Right.
confident in your picks, you don't know what you're talking about. But
Right.
there's a very fine line, because also with betting, I'll be so sure of these bets, but in my head, I know it's a 50% chance of it hitting. Like and even for the elite, we're talking like, I would say on a good year, I'm probably about 55 to 60%, right? Like, and I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
really strong year for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would say a lot of the elite guys are maybe closer to 60%. That's fine. But I would say that like it's difficult sometimes because you're so confident in the
Mm-hmm.
bets. You're like, man, this is the one. I've done all the homework. How does this not hit? Like, how does it not hit?
Right.
And then that's the game where obviously it goes wrong. So I think it's important to like, no, you talked about bankroll management. It's the same thing as investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the stock market, you're like, you put all in on this risky stock because you heard something and got wind about it, or maybe crypto, and you're like, hey, this is the time. There's also the risk factor there too. So I think one thing that I try to teach on this channel a little bit more is risk tolerance, right? For
Mm-hmm.
fantasy and betting. You have to understand, if you want the reward, you have to be able to take the risk. So
Right.
if you want to win 10 bands on a bet, there's a number that's associated with winning 10 bands. And the closer odds you have to winning, the more you got to pay. And I think for me, I've realized like I go in on, I try to stay on a weekly limit. And if I can tell myself this is what I have to work with, if it loses, it loses, I'm fine with that. And if I want to try to chase it, I'm only chasing with what I won for that weekend or trying to replenish what I've lost in the past. So I think that's for betting styles. It's important to know, like, how important is it to your life? Because if you're trying to bet to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, pay your car note, whatever it is, you're in the wrong lane. And I'm just gonna say that right here on this channel. I love talking to everybody about betting, but that's not the way to use this thing. This is should be fun, supplemental to whatever fantasy that you have, and nothing that hurts the integrity of your household.
Facts. No,
So
that's big. That's big.
Yeah, man. And it's, I think it's important to talk about responsible gaming at some point. We don't always get to have this conversation. And this is something that I like to preach on this channel, because I think there's a lot of going viral moments and, people that put stuff out for content purposes. And it's not always talked about the reality side of this. And especially as we're going to get ready to talk about season long player props that we like and starting the betting conversation. I think responsible gaming and just like knowing, okay, like there needs to be more education on this, but like you also got to be able to have some self-control. It's not a conversation we always want to have because it's not the fun. This isn't the clippable stuff, but this is like a conversation you need to be listening to. So
facts.
Let's get into it, bro. Let's get into some of these player props as we go. When we talk about, be careful. These are the smashes. Like
these are the smashes.
Let's start talking about some player props. And obviously, this is a good time, right? OTAs are happening. Training camp is on the way. And for those who are interested, right, in season long, this is a longer term bet, but a lot of these are easier to actually go through in place. Like to me, this is the type of, you had enough information in order to make a decision. Right. You're looking at season long props, Marcus. Is there anything you just like? Because for me, I'd be looking at like, all right, undervalued, overvalued. I'm only looking for value. I'm not looking at like, I think this player is gonna have a mega year. I'm like, where are the odds makers wrong? Is there anything that you'd be looking for when you're looking at these like props and these lines?
Yeah, definitely. If I'm going yardage, I'm definitely looking for where I feel like guys are wrong, or guys that might have had maybe a little down year last year, depending on injuries they were dealing with, or guys hurt, or they might have had a new coach added, and are kind of primed for a big year.
Yep.
And then on top of that, I'm looking for, I'm normally not going with whoever the favorite is, right? I'm looking for that guy that's maybe that next tier down that nobody's really talking about, where I can get some really good odds on that one and make some, make a nice little come up, right? Obviously,
you mentioned odds. So are you looking for like, are you looking for plus odds? You looking for, like where you're able to get, maybe a lower value for like a higher amount, right? So are you looking for, I need to 3x my money on this bet? Or are you looking for a straight bet where maybe you got to pay a little bit of juice?
No, I'm looking for a 3xer. You know what I mean? I'm looking for something where I can kind of 3x, especially on a season long. It really doesn't make sense. It's a long wait if you got, $10 in there, you know what I mean? And so if I can at least, if I can X my money, 3 or 4 times, I'm good with that as far as, especially the season long. I'm looking for maybe a less of that if I'm going just on a single game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And trying to add up a few singles, then, it kind of works itself out that way. But
talk to me. What's one you looking at, bro? You got anything you're looking at right now? Give me one.
Yeah, there's one I'm looking at specifically for the offensive rookie of the year. This is a big one. I think a lot of people are high on JHEN, right? Which is, I like JHEN as a running back. I just don't think he has the offensive line behind him to really push him where he needs to be.
We on the same page with JHEN.
I also like Cam Ward, right? But, I don't think he has the tools. I think them getting rid of that running back, the best running back in football.
Yeah.
I think Derrick Henry being gone is going to hurt him in his development on the running game. And I think he's going to throw a lot of interceptions. I do think he will be a successful rookie. I think that he will throw for a good amount of yards. I just don't see him doing what he needs to do. Also being in Tennessee, I don't know if that's the market to really get the popularity behind, right? A lot of these times it's a popularity contest. Who's hot, right? Who's making the big plays, right? And one guy that stands out to me is Travis Hunter.
Ooh, so rookie of the year, offensive defense.
Offensive rookie of the year.
Offensive?
Right? Offensive. And here's the thing, right? Because it's not expected, right? It's not expected. And I think that with the breakout year that their other receiver had, Brian
Thomas.
Brian Thomas, yeah. The breakout year he had last year, Travis is not going to be the focal point. He's going to get an opportunity to get in the slot, be that second guy, be the third guy, right, where teams might not be focused on you and make some big plays, right? And I think that, his playmaker ability and being able to make big plays, playing opposite of another big-time receiver who I think is a better receiver than him, right? And so if you got a guy that's better than you, right, it gives you that opportunity to kind of, hang out in the shadows, you know what I mean, get a couple packages. And I think when he's in on offense, I think they're going to get on the ball.
Man, they've been saying he's looking kind of sloppy in some of his routes, and I think that's another thing too. OTAs don't define the season.
I mean, they said that about Jamar Chase, right?
Ooh,
I remember when they said he couldn't catch, and I'm like, how do you watch this college film and tell me that this guy can't catch because of 2 weeks of practice, right? And so the thing is, it's really about learning your teammates, learning the playbook. Travis Hunter was the number one recruit in high school for a reason, right? He was the Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. He's a playmaker. When the lights are on, when the play is needed, he gonna make a play. You know what I mean? And that's who he's been his entire life. And I see him now being the second tier, right? You're not the main guy, right? And I think that his main position really is cornerback, right? But at the same time, I think there will be a package for him on offense that when he does come in the game, they will be looking for him, right? And when he comes in the game and they're looking for him, I just see plays being made.
I think Travis Hunter is going to be the one problem I have with him. I like the bet. I like if you're gonna, especially if you're getting decent odds on it. I just think that he'll be a little inconsistent. But the thing with inconsistency is that if you have 2 or 3 big weeks, that negates all inconsistency because the numbers will be there at the end.
The numbers will be there. You get a big finish. You know what I mean? And that, and I think similar to his Heisman, right? There were better receivers. There were better corners. But who's doing it both?
Who's doing it both?
Who's doing it both? You know what I mean? And so I think, even if he's not the best rookie receiver, there might be rookie receivers with better numbers. They're going to say, yeah, but he's playing corner too. He got to be.
A lot of people really like Ted McMillan out of Carolina. A lot of people are looking at some of these other, players, Jack Besh, and there's like a lot of underrated Kyle Williams. There's a lot of underrated receivers this year, but Travis he already has the star power, and sometimes star power carries you a long way. Exactly. Odell, Jefferson.
Yeah.
A rookie I like. A rookie I like this year, not for rookie of the year, but just as a prop, right? 649.5 yards, 649.5 for Quinshon Judkins. Now, he was the college football, the athlete, right? The spin move. That's what you saw all over for the game. But in real life, he had I would say call it a subpar season for what people expected him in college. Now he goes to a Cleveland Browns team that Nick Chubb's gone. They're not re-signing Nick Chubb. And so really all you got to do is beat out Jerome Ford for touches. And I don't think the Cleveland Browns are like, hey, we're going to win a championship this year with their quarterback situation that they have rocking with Shador and Dylan Gabriel and Joe Flacco, whoever else is there, right?
Right.
So I think what this team is going to do is run the football. And if we're talking about 12 to 15 carries a game, if he can stay healthy for, 15 to 16 games out the year, under 700 yards rushing for potentially a starting running back, that's absurd. Right. He can get that in 10, 12 games, if he has the right type of game. So for me, I don't think they're going to ask their quarterbacks to do too much. Maybe if it's Flacco, they ask him to open things up. But for me, Quinshon Judkins, if he wins the starting role or earns a bigger workload, under 700 yards to me is a gift. So I really like that play there.
I like that play as well.
What else you got on the
He's gonna have
agenda?
a nice year. I think he's gonna have a nice year. Another one.
Ohio State back. You know what I'm saying? We've seen like Zeke come in and do well. Like he's gonna be nice.
Yeah, no, I think he's gonna be nice, real nice. So what else I got? I got Penix and Fields on the over. Right. I think they got those guys going around at or around 3,000. I think Penix or Fields, they got him throwing for 2,400, and I
Yeah, let
just
me see.
feel
I'll pull
like
him up. Michael Penix and Justin Fields.
Michael Penix and Justin Field. I think they both are at or below 3,000 yards, and I just see those guys having breakout years. I think Fields jumping around a little bit, is definitely, he's kind of under the radar now, right? He doesn't have that focal point of that first round draft pick. He's kind of like almost forgotten a little bit. And
yeah,
so
they got Fields at 2,570, like 2,575, and they got Michael Penix closer to 3,400. So
okay, they got Michael Penix at 34. Okay,
yeah.
So I still see him going over that. And Fields for sure is a slam dunk. I think he's definitely clearing that, being the guy.
You like Fields this year? Because that was one of I've been talking all offseason. I feel like he's about to smash ADP wise, expectations wise for this Jets team. People are still like putting Fields in this weird boat of like he's not good. I don't understand it.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, the teams that are trading for him want him. I think what Brett Favre was able to do over there, or not Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, same shit, right?
Yeah, right. I think what he was able to do over there, I think he could definitely match it, right? He's got the young, the young legs, his ability to run and extend plays. That's just what you need in today's game, right? And I think that he's definitely going to smash his over-under.
Well, I like that because when you pair that with a Breece Hall, somebody who's dynamic out the backfield, you pair that with a Garrett Wilson, one of the better receivers in the league, and you know that Justin Fields has already proven that he can be a startable type of player. It's like, well, why are we not expecting this kid to kill it? And especially when it comes to passing yards, I don't understand why. I mean, they're bringing over some stuff from the Lions, which we saw Jared Goff be really good in that system. They're saying they believe in him all the way. It's not like a Steelers situation where he has to compete and worry about a backup. So if he's healthy throughout the year, and we're talking 2,500 yards, like to me, it seems like he should be able to smash that. I think the way he wouldn't is if he gets hurt. But I mean, we're talking about 150 yards a game.
Right.
Well, with that too, I also like somebody else on the Jets, and that's Garrett Wilson. Right, Garrett Wilson, his touchdown number is at 4.5. And I feel like this is an extension of that Justin Fields type thing. You're like, Garrett Wilson, his first 2 years in the league, had 3 and 4 touchdowns. And he had 7 last year with Aaron Rodgers. But that was also with Devontae Adams. This is also Garrett Wilson's 4th year in the league. He's also going to be the only receiver damn near on this offense. And, I look at what Justin Fields was able to do with DJ Moore, and I'm like, 4.5 touchdowns? Yeah, maybe with Zach Wilson, that was the appropriate number. But that's not the appropriate number with a Justin Fields. And I think it's disrespecting Garrett Wilson as a player, and it's not aligning with the situation. This is a different situation in New York right now. And I feel like Garrett Wilson should have, like I said, it wasn't there the first 2 years, but he's developed as a player since then.
No, definitely development. I see him having a great year, especially more than 4. I mean, that's low.
Yeah, that's super low, bro. Super low.
Yeah.
Give me one more. You got another one? Give me one.
I got one
last one, bro.
Here's one that. Here's one I'm going against what I would normally do.
Uh-oh.
Right.
This ain't normally good though.
Right.
You can't go against the grain.
It's not as disciplined as I am. Right. And this is also a little emotional betting. Right. Which you don't want to get in the habit of doing this. Right. But I felt so bad for Lamar Jackson losing the MVP last year. I just feel like he's a shoo-in, right? I feel like that the Ravens are the team to beat in the AFC. The way their year ended, I think people are going to feel bad knowing that he should have got the MVP last year and almost give him that sympathy vote because I think he's going to continue to just kill the league like he's been doing. And, I think he has the best odds to win the MVP. Unless they feel some kind of sympathy, like Joe Burrow might need it next, right? But I think what he's able to do on the ground and in the air, year in and year out, knowing he has a great team around him, he's going to get the wins. He's got a running game. They just re-signed Derrick Henry to a big-time deal, so he's happy. You get a happy running back. I just don't see anybody stopping him from doing whatever he needs to do, right? 4 touchdown games, 5 touchdown games. I see him getting MVP.
Well, you're getting decent odds on that, plus 550, plus 600, depending on where you're looking at. He's one of those players, though, like you said, there's not a lot of sometimes when you bet MVP, you want to look for extra juice, right? You want to look for who can have that surprise season and really take it.
Right.
Sometimes it is better to just go with the favorites.
Right.
That's what wins most of the time is somebody in that top 3 or top 5 odds. That's typically the guys who win it. Vegas isn't normally that far off. So I'm actually not mad at that. And I think Lamar and this Ravens team, they're going to be out for blood this year, man.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be out for blood, especially losing the AFC Championship the way they did and losing the last couple of years the way that they have.
No, definitely.
Yeah. All right, let me get one more. I got one more in here.
Yeah.
And this is a player I've been talking up a lot over the years. I think it's his time. And I think when it comes to the Detroit Lions, everybody is assuming Amon-Ra St. Brown is the hitter, and he's the guy that everybody is going for. But Jameson Williams dealt with that suspension a couple of years ago, torn ACL a year before that in college. There's a lot that kid's been going through, but you've been hearing nothing but positive rave reviews coming out of camp about Jameson Williams and his impact this year. New offensive coordinator in there, new passing game coordinator, excuse me. I think things will change a little bit. Ben Johnson is now gone, so new offensive coordinator. There's a little bit of a change here in this offense, and they've talked about how he's had a strong offseason, and you talked about this, and I also have had a conversation with Sammy Coates, former NFL wide receiver, and he said one of the things you want to look at is what's the change in their dynamic, in their situation, but also changes to their body. And it sounds like he's gotten a lot stronger this offseason. And if you pair that up with his elite speed that he already has at the wide receiver position, this could make for a really big year. He had a strong year last year, but 874 yards is on the board right now. And I feel like this is going to be a 1,000-yard season for Jameson Williams with the way they're talking up. So give me the over on his receiving yards. Jameson Williams over 874 yards receiving.
Yeah, I'm taking that over too. I like that over.
You like that one?
I like that one, man. I think, he's going to have a big year. For me personally, I wouldn't put my money on that one only because I don't have the history and the knowledge behind the new OC, right? I don't know, what his scheme is. I don't know what he likes to do. I don't know if he focuses in on a guy, if he spreads the ball out, how they like to do that. So that's still a great year. Anything over that, I think, will be a great year for him. And so it's kind of hard to say, but I do like the camaraderie he's built with Goff, and I think they do.
He had 1,000 yards last season, so I'm he cracked 1,000 yards last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why he doesn't replicate that, especially if they were saying for the Lions staff to be oh no, he's gonna have a breakout year, and he had 1,000 last year. I'm shit, he might blow 1,000 out the water.
Right.
And so for me, I listen a lot to what these coaches say, especially because a player that was like that last year, Rashad Bateman. There was all out of camp. They're yo, Rashad Bateman's got a big year. Rashad Bateman's got a big year. And guess what? He did. He became a part of the offense. I listen to shit like that. To me, that's value.
Right. No, that's super value. And I think, honestly, if they tell you, you know what I mean, and if they're being public about it, then it's for sure whether he has a big year or not, they're going to do everything in their power for him to have that big year, right? So if they're putting it out there, they're definitely they got the plays in line for him, you know what I mean? And I think it's good to listen to the coaches. I think the guys in the locker room who know what's going on, I think those are the best people to look for or listen to, right? I think sometimes during the season, they say things that kind of throw other teams off. So you can't get 100% behind it. But I think in the off season, things like that and what they want to do, I think you definitely want to look at what they're saying.
And Dan Campbell's believable, right? Like, he's a former player. He talks with a passion. Like, when he says something, normally there's some substance behind it. Because, I mean, you can go to other teams like the Atlanta Falcons, who every year they say Kyle Pitts is about to be MVP candidate. He don't ever do shit.
Right.
Never. So, I don't know, man.
They about to get rid of him or what? He on the trading block?
They said he on a trading block. I don't know. Kyle Pitts, man. I've been a big Kyle Pitts fan too, bro.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts, bro, before we get off?
I hope he pans out. No, man. Hey, I love being on here. I'm excited about the future and what we can do with this, and getting some more insight and continue to just learn myself, right? And continue to dive into the whole fantasy world, the whole betting world, and share the knowledge with whoever wants to learn.
Yes, sir. Well, Marcus, been great having you. And like I said, this is the start of something beautiful, man. We're going to be having you throughout the season, throughout this off season too. So as we go on, if you guys got questions for Marcus, for myself, feel free to drop them in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and we will see y'all on the next one. Peace out.
Peace.